Ben Brown, Evolution Martial Arts in Sparks, Nevada with my buddy Travis. We're switching gears. We're going into top, pressure, and attacks. So the class we're doing now is just learning what the different pins are, some elements of those pins, so different pinning options from each kind of pin, and then specifically moving from pin to pin. So John Danaher calls it dynamic pinning, using movement as a way to pin your opponent from the top. He talks about it this way, and I like this analogy, is he says, think of it as a team of pins. So you have a bunch of different guys, teammates, that when one of them loses the pin, the next one takes up his pin. So you're actually operating with a team of pins here. To me, side control is sort of the starting point for all this, and that being said, at the highest levels, they don't even do side control because it's too easy to get out of. And the reason is, when I'm in side control, I can either really control Travis's shoulder line or his hip line, but not both. If I try to do both, I'm not doing either one very well. And if he's any good at all, which he is, all he needs is a little bit of space to start either getting inside space or a frame, which is another form of inside space, and freeing up his hips and moving out. But from side control, the classic is a seatbelt grip around the head, under the arm. I have inside space here. I have the inside space on this side between his shoulder and his neck. Something that I see new people do a lot is they stay on their knees. I'm not calling it wrong, but it releases a ton of pressure. It's good for control, but it's terrible for pressure. So I want to get up on my toes, and I want chest to chest, and it's not straight down here. It's at an angle this way. So like, I'm constantly gonna be backing up and pressing in, backing up and pressing in, that type of thing. Another useful thing here, when you're new, you fall in love with this gable grip, and you're like, oh, I can hold someone down. Yeah, but there's no attacks from here. So eventually you gotta learn how to hold this without a gable grip, free up this arm. I really like reaching in the armpit here, pulling it in, and dropping this shoulder pressure. Pretty nasty. What this does is this misaligns Travis's cervical spine, which discombobulates, fancy word there, his entire nervous system. Yeah, right? So we're starting here. For newer people, and unless you know how to do it, I advocate staying away from the legs. Travis is gonna wanna try to capture one of my legs and put me in half guard. And we just spent like 2 months on half guard. There's so much he can do here. I almost think if you're good at it, you have an advantage if you capture my leg, even though you're on the bottom. In a lot of ways, that can be a very offensive position. So I advocate staying away from the legs. So now let's talk about the 5 different kinds of pins. There's side pins. I'm on the side of Travis. He doesn't control my leg, and even if he does, that half guard is still a side pin, right? There's north-south pins. So, like if Travis goes for a ghost, like he underhooks this arm, I would transition to a north-south pin. So in a north-south pin, I can have 2 arms in, 1 arm in, 1 out, 1 arm in, 1 out. And the only way I can control Travis if I don't have any of that is if I have his neck in like a north-south choke attempt. That's still considered a pin. And then I can rotate all the way to the other side and go a side pin on that side. So that's 2 kinds of pins, a side pin and north-south pin. Another kind of pin is knee on belly. So I've got my shin across his hips. That's if I'm being nice. If I'm not being nice, I can go on his chest. You can even put it like up on there, like by their throat. It's terrible. But normally for my friends in class, I go across. The key here is this foot has to be connected to the hip right here. So it like locks in like a Lego, click. And then I've got my base leg over here. Ideally, I want to keep him from getting access to my leg, which can be tough. But essentially what I'm saying is I don't want my leg really close to his body like this right here. Then he can start wrapping up my leg. I don't want it straight out either because now I'm not mobile. So it's that balance here. What am I doing here? I'm trying to control his wrists. I'm trying to expose an arm. I'm trying to control his head, misalign his spine. So now I have a pull and a push, and it's a pretty effective pin, at least for a little while. The other pins, mount, my hips over his hips, low mount, mid mount, high mount, which is the best, right? I can be in like a modified butterfly mount. Quarter guard is kind of a, can be considered mount. So basically he has just my ankle and that's it. I'm essentially mounted on you. And then the other mount is a back mount, chest to back, right? So yeah, you're just sitting up. So it's interesting that these days we equate this to having someone's back in, and you do. And then we talk about falling to one side or the other and all that stuff. But the ideal mount, and this is what you would do to me, is go ahead and get on my back, because I know this is what you would prefer to do to people. Roll me onto my belly. Let's turn the other way, just so we're in the camera. So he rolls me on my belly, flattens me out. Yeah, and he's extending. So let's do that again. Let's scoot back because I want to make sure we're in the frame. Let's do that right here. However you get them on their belly. There have been a lot of high-level MMA fights ended this way. I'm thinking of Rashad Evans versus Chael Sonnen. Was it Rashad Evans? I think it was. Flatten him out, pound it on his head, game over. Or it's a great way to slip in a rear naked choke. So he rolls me into my belly. I mean, this is what he wants. I go, oh, this is terrible. He's hipping in. I can't use my feet on the ground. So if there's strikes allowed, he's just gonna pound my head into oblivion. Oh yeah, this is terrible. And if not, he's looking to sink that rear naked choke, and that becomes a pretty easy game over choke. Those are the 5 kinds of pins. And there's variations of each. And there's lots of ways to do those. So today we just worked on, here on bottom. Today we just worked on side control. Now let's kind of back up a little bit. I can have one hand on this side, one on this side. That configuration can be switched. This bottom hand should be monitoring these hips. Should be controlling the hip a little bit, right? I can have both arms on this side, which is like when we start attacking Kimuras, straight arm bars, Americanas. Technically, I can have both arms on this side. But at this point, I don't have any control over your hips. So that's my least favorite configuration. So going from here, what I had the person on bottom do in the class was they could frame or underhook with this hand as a means of trying to free the hips. So if you push for a frame, as you're creating that space, I'm gonna post my hand on your hip and on your shoulder, which is nice cross-body control. I pop up like a surfer, and I go to knee on belly, and we play for a minute. And kind of the most common way to get out of this is you try to get on an edge and you shove the knee that way. And I go right back to a side pin, right? And I try to regain this underhook, because that's the downside of that, is you're always gonna have that underhook if you do that. So I go here. Let's say you do underhook. So I'm going to, there's 2 things I can do from here. One is I can go around the head to a north-south pin, any kind of north-south pin, all the way to the other side. Or I can go to my favorite pin of all time, which is scarf. Let's turn this way a little bit, just like that. So, this is that magic timing thing. And I bait people into this all the time, okay? I'm here. I know that he should underhook. He can either frame or underhook. So if I take away the frame by having my head really tight, as he starts to underhook, I control this elbow over here. There's other videos I've done on scarf, right? But this is a bait. Let's turn a little more this way. I fill up this inside space with my hip. I make it so he can't get his shoulder on the mat. This is awesome control. And then I talked about the 2 ways to escape scarf. So in the drill, this was when we would switch positions. Probably the most basic one of all is a body lock. So Travis body locks me. And you gave us this awesome detail. It's like really finding that spot under your floating ribs, between the hip and the rib. He's really focusing on that spot, and it's total connection. Hands in to a body lock, hips in as close to me as possible. Now his hips are under mine. I don't have any base anymore. All he does is bridge and roll. And that's how we're switching the drill. So now Travis would be on top. If I frame, he pops up to me on belly. We play for a minute. I get my edge, he's back down. I underhook, he goes to scarf. Now mind you, he could have gone around my head to north-south too. But in the class we were going to scarf, okay? So we play around in scarf a little bit. I'm going through my hands away, hips away, or hands in, hips in. As soon as I've got it, I bridge and roll. And you're a lot bigger than me, and it doesn't matter.
Once you connect, yeah.
At all, it doesn't matter, right? And it's a timing thing. Just for reference sake, just because we're talking about scarf, really what Travis really wants is he wants this elbow against his ribs. If he gets that, there's no scarf. And what most people here usually do is squeeze the head really hard, but it doesn't matter. Like, I can't do anything to you. So you can just weather that storm a little bit. If I don't abandon this, I'm gonna get my back taken. So the deal is, what I'm teaching people is, as soon as you lose him, he tucks the elbow, I'm trying to get a better pin. And here's one last thing. Let's scoot this way a little. Because in that case, this is what will happen. If he gets his elbow back, he automatically has this underhook. So to negate the underhook, I drop my weight to his hip line. Because in a side pin, I can only control your shoulders or your hips, not both. So if I go try to control shoulders here, he uses that underhook to regain guard in multiple ways. He can even expose my arm like this. So I can't let that happen. If I'm at any time going for a side pin and you have an underhook, I gotta shift my weight to down to your hips. And now I gotta like battle for that inside space. You know, I can be down here fighting for that inside space. If I try to pin you and you have an effective underhook, I just gave you what you want, what you were gonna have to work for anyway. So the whole point of this drill, we're moving around the body, trying to stay away from the legs for now, not for always, but for now. So we're rotating around the head, we're popping up to knee on belly, or we're sitting through into scarf. The main thing is starting to understand pressure. So even in scarf, it's this thing. I want all of my weight and gravity going onto Travis. So right now my hips are down, and it's not that uncomfortable. But as soon as I lift up, it sucks. And again, I'm not pressing straight down, I'm pressing in this way. And it's a ribs, look, my ribs pressing into his ribs. Who's win? Why?
Gravity.
I have gravity on my side, even though you're bigger, stronger than me. Gravity counts for a lot, so I'm pushing in his ribs with gravity. It's very uncomfortable. And you can cook people to death from here. And there's like 6 submission options. I'll run through them real quick, just for funsies. There's a Kimura right here, whether you connect your hands or not. Okay, connect the hands. Kimura. Armbar. This is the one that I never do in class because it's so dangerous. But in Americana, I could even figure 4 my legs. Your arm's so tight, I can't even do it.
Yeah.
And if your partner doesn't know what they're doing on bottom, they can hurt themselves. So I know that's there, but I never do it in class. Americana here. He frames my head, arm triangle. And then my personal favorite, the one that Josh Barnett submitted Dean Lister with, first time he'd been submitted in 15 years. And the dude competed at the highest levels of jiu-jitsu and in the UFC. Submitted him with this guy right here. Because it's so awful. It's a catch wrestling move. I don't even know what they call it, but
it's a compression.
It's just a compression.
Yeah.
It's nasty. Scarf, I think, honestly, is the best pin. And people can argue that, whatever. It's my favorite pin by far because of all the options. But the key is, I'm in scarf, I have to know when it's gone. And I'll tell you when it's gone. As soon as he gets his elbow back, it's gone. Now my goal is to stay on top. I have to abandon that, because if I don't, he's either gonna take my back or he's gonna roll me. Yeah? I'm gonna get slapped if I try to hold on to something that's gone. What I'm teaching you guys is to recognize when your control is gone in a pin. What you should do is tag out, tag a new guy in. When I say new guy, I mean a new pin. So your side pin failed.
Yeah.
And every pin will eventually fail. If your partner's any good at all, every pin will eventually fail. Tag a new pin, tag them in. And then last thing I want to say in this video is this. The whole point of pinning is to control a person long enough to expose a limb or the neck and attack it. And you have to realize that the more energy, more attention you put into attacking, the less attention you have on controlling. So that's our chess match, is to maintain enough control to isolate and keep that limb or neck isolated and attack it. When you're new, a lot of times you struggle real hard against someone who's got a good pin on you, who's got great control. That's not the time to struggle that much. It's time to relax a little, get good connection, and feel when they release some of the control to attack. That's the time to take inside space or frame and move your hips. You got anything else?
Just on that concept, Gracie Brothers, they run the university, and they say all the time, the right move at the wrong time is the wrong move. So you can fight and fight and fight, and Huron is really good about showing how relaxed he can be in these positions. And I have probably another 100 years before I get to that point, but it's a thing. The more comfortable you can be in a place that is absolutely miserable, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
I want to add one more thing. Spinal structure, so posture. Because it's base, posture, and connection are kind of the three main things we're working on here today. So when I'm on bottom and we're drilling all day and Travis is working on his pins, look at this dude. And you're a black belt. You're really good at this. We've trained for 10 years together. It's not that fun even in drilling, and you're not being mean, but it still kind of sucks. You know what makes it suck worse is when I have an extended spine, it actually adds to his pressure. So he wants an extended spine. He wants to, extend his spine into me, and that's pressing. If you round your spine at all, so go ahead and round your spine, I feel the release and pressure, and that's when I can. So what I want to do is round my spine. And you're going to try to keep me from rounding it, but I'm trying to round my spine, and the pressure is not that bad right now. But if I don't round my spine, oh man, the exact same thing really sucks.
Yeah.
So my point is, when you're on bottom, round your spine.
Yeah, elbows in.
When you're on top, don't round your spine.
Right.
Yes, if you're moving, but extended spine is what you do for pressure. And when you're on bottom, if you just get used to rounding your spine, it takes a lot of pressure off. It creates a little bit of space, and that's how you can start moving. Anyway, it's kind of a longer video. I get it. We're going to be staying on this topic for quite a while because we're talking about all the pins, several options from each kind of pin, and then a few attacks from each one of those. That's a couple of months worth of stuff. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
Cool.